When looking at the waiver wire for week 9, you'll see a lot of the same names at running back, wide receiver. We got some upside at tight end, but at quarterback, we got a new name. We got a new guy to look at. Everyone's excited about him. Everyone's asking questions. Everybody's searching his name. He's popping up a lot, and he's going to be a starter for Thursday night. We're talking about Will Levis of the Tennessee Titans. He went off last week, QB6, tossing 4 touchdowns in his debut. And we're going to be going over the news, the facts, the data on whether or not you need him for fantasy football. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Tap it with your finger on your phone. Click it with your mouse on the computer. Whatever you need to do to get the job done, because we're doing deep dives off the waiver wire every single day to help you win your leagues, to help you set your lineups, to help you learn more about these players. Hit that button. Stop missing out. Let's look at Will Levis real quick. So this was the first start of his career, and he went off, completing 19 passes for 238 yards, 4 touchdowns, had 29 pass attempts. The Titans averaged 32 per game, but was very productive in this game. Also 7 rushing attempts, 11 yards. That is good to see, because that means we got a little bit of a Konami code there. We got a little bit there. He took off 7 times with it. 29 pass attempts, pretty solid, but 34.62 fantasy points. That's what people are looking at when they think of Will Levis. That's what they're wondering about, because you see this rookie quarterback step up and really ignite a fire with these Tennessee Titans. And really, he was slinging it deep. He was slinging it all over the yard, and that's what you need from some of these quarterbacks. You need that deep ball. You need them to toss some air yards. You need them to complete some of those deep passes. Of course, coverage breakdowns and everything else. But you need a quarterback that just stands in the pocket and just does not care and wings it downfield. And that's going to help the wide receivers in the offense, especially DeAndre Hopkins. A guy like Will Levis just slinging rockets and not thinking twice equates to fantasy points. Because if he connects on a few of those, you got a big week, like we saw on Sunday. And this chart from PFF says the same thing. We had 8 pass attempts of 20-plus yards in one game. Very solid. Very aggressive. That's what you want from your quarterbacks. That, or they're very efficient in moving the chains, throwing from the short to intermediate. But we got deep ball steady by this guy. He's tossing it downfield. This is huge for DeAndre Hopkins, as that marinates well for him and the rest of the pass catchers in this offense. But he's slinging it. He's tossing deep balls. That's what we want to see. Also, 76% of his passes were catchable. He was on fire. He was on point. 82.4% of the time, the pocket was clean when he was throwing the ball. 37.5% of his pass attempts were deep balls, 20-plus yards. That's good to see. He's pushing it downfield, which means if he connects, you got a big week. It's all or nothing, looks like, with this guy. And 341 attempted air yards because he's slinging it downfield. Deep balls equals fantasy production. When it hits, it hit. We got fantasy production. That's one thing you can say about Will Levis. He's got some gusto. He puts mayo in his coffee. He does not care. He is a honey badger of quarterbacks, and he's going to push it downfield. We kind of saw that in college. He started off at Penn State. Didn't do so well there. Transferred over to Kentucky. His first season there, pretty solid. Got some production, but the hype was building. The hype was building pretty big. A lot of people were calling him a first-round talent back then after they saw the big arm, him slinging some passes. 2022 happened. It wasn't super bad or anything, but it didn't progress. Kind of degressed a little bit, but still, you saw the talent. Also, wasn't working with the same weapons as Wan'Dale Robinson was in the NFL. The offensive line was up and down. There are some things to note when you look at the context here. There are some things to think about, but still, when you look at the intangibles, it's the deep ball, it's the arm strength. The thing that was noted at the NFL Combine, his arm in the workouts, that got him drafted in the second round. However, the rumors during draft season, he was going to be a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, he was going to be a top guy. fell in the draft to the second round. He could have been an early first pick, but fell to the Titans at 202. A lot of people scratching their heads on draft day and why he fell in the draft. Was it talent? Was it inexperience? It wasn't the greatest collegiate profile. It was not. He wasn't the most efficient quarterback. There were a lot of question marks. Why make that top tier investment on a quarterback that has so many question marks around him and really just hedge your bets with other investments? Looking at the athletic specs here, nothing really to note here. Good enough speed to get the job done as a quarterback running it on the ground, really help you out in fantasy. Decent burst can get you that. Not going to be a home run hitter as a Konami code quarterback, but a guy that can get you a little something something. So those 11 carries that we saw are not too surprising, but the arm strength, which is not noted here, is what you want to look at, and we saw that on Sunday. You can go back to the college tape if you want. You can go back to the combine workouts. But what we saw on Sunday is what he was billed at. A gunslinger, a guy who tosses it deep, a guy that takes risks. He will do that. I would not be surprised if we have some down games where he throws multiple interceptions. And I would not be surprised if we have more games like Sunday where he's tossing deep balls and connecting on a few and getting some big plays. This team runs 60 plays per game, 32 pass plays per game, 28 run plays per game. This is a slower volume team all around. They do not run as many plays. They do not pass as much as some of the top teams in the league. Average, middle of the road is around 40 pass plays a game, 38-ish, somewhere around there. And top tier is around 42 to 45. Looking at that, DeAndre Hopkins, huge benefactor of that. 3 touchdowns on Sunday and is the target hog of the offense, is the guy who's going to benefit. Treylon Burks is coming back. He's on the upswing. He played in yesterday's game. He's been dealing with a knee issue. We saw his knee wrapped up in practice for the last few weeks. Looks like he's getting some snaps. This could benefit him as a dark horse later in the year. DeAndre Hopkins, though, should go nuclear and continue to get around a 30% target share. And we saw that. At least Will Levis is smart enough to step back there and know, just toss it DeAndre Hopkins. Let's see what happens. Get it to him. See what happens. It's only going to be good for me, like it has been with every other jabroni quarterback. Looking at quarterbacks here for fantasy and whether or not you need a quarterback like this, first off, we're going to compare QB10s, that QB10 range to that QB20 range, and the variance isn't too much. It's about 6.6 points per week, so almost 7-point difference from a quarterback 20 in scoring to a quarterback 10 on a weekly basis. So how can we use that to benefit? There's multiple different ways. One, there's no reason to have a backup quarterback on your fantasy roster. So if you already have a good quarterback, you already have one of the top guys, in essence, getting Will Levis isn't really going to help you that much, because if you lose that quarterback, you can just play the matchups and you can probably beat that variance and you can probably get a QB 15 to QB 12 anyways and still not be too far behind. On top of that, though, you may want him as a lottery ticket or to prevent one of those bottom dwellers in your league who's fighting for a playoff spot to get him, just in case he hits on that upside. And we'll talk about his schedule later on the video, so stay along for that. But the thing about this is I'm not huge on having a backup quarterback in 1 QB leagues. In 2 QB leagues, he's already rostered. He's probably rostered in 80 to 90 to 95 to 100% of leagues, because in 2 QB leagues, the quarterback position is ultra valuable. So really, we're just looking at 1 QB leagues here. Super flex, he should be rostered. In 1 QB, you don't need a backup. However, if you need to shoot for upside, or if you're already streaming, he's a guy you're going to be looking at a lot here, because the upside's grand. We are already seeing it. He already tapped into it, and we know, by the way he acts, the way he carries himself, from what we've seen over the years, he throws deep balls, he's aggressive, he pushes the window, and that could allow you to tap into upside. So if he doesn't hit that upside, and he gets you a QB 20 week, QB 18 week, it's not too far off from the QB 10 week, QB 8, 9, 10, 11. So you're not really shooting yourself in the foot too much. But if he taps in that upside like we saw and gets you a QB 6 week or so, and you got him free off the waiver wire, or you're playing the matchups with him and you're just streaming, and he hits that upside, then you got an upside QB1 there on the cheap. So the gamble's really not too bad. As long as he really doesn't go super dank on us, like QB 25 range to 30, it's not going to be too bad. So if you want to take that gamble and you're in a position where you got to stream quarterbacks, Will Levis is really your dude. However, if you good at QB, you don't need a backup QB, which you should in one QB, then he really is not your dude. So it's really depending on how your team's built and whether or not you want a lottery ticket or you're streaming quarterbacks and you're shooting for upside. That being said, the schedule here for the Titans pretty juicy here for the quarterback position. You're going to be able to throw in a lot of these teams. A quarterback like Will Levis is probably going to thrive in some of these scenarios. Again, we got some tighter matchups than others, but compared to other teams in the league, this is pretty beneficial. We got the Steelers. You can throw in the Steelers a little bit. They allow a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers. This is definitely going to be a DeAndre Hopkins performance as we're looking at that. It's a Thursday night game in a second start. Very leery on that, and I believe a lot of people are as well. As we look at the rankings here, QB 21 for 444, QB 19 on Fantasy Pros. Yahoo has him as QB 18. Fantasy Life has him as QB 20. So he's sitting around QB 20 range in the rankings. That makes sense. That's probably where you're going to feel safe ranking him at for the week. But you got to think the upside could be a lot higher than that. The downside is probably a little bit lower if he really goes dank on us. However, on average, he's probably going to be in that range. But you're shooting for upside with this player because you got a lot of upside here. You need him because you need a quarterback with upside. You're streaming quarterbacks. You don't have a backup. You're just going off the waiver wire with the matchups here. He's in a decent matchup. He's going to have some decent matchups in the near future. You're looking at him. You're looking at him as a future streaming option. You're not picking him up today, but maybe tomorrow. You're just looking at him right now and thinking about him. You don't need him because you shouldn't have an extra quarterback. You're good at quarterback. Backups are stupid, especially if you got a stud. Why waste that roster spot when you can spin it on a wide receiver or running back? Play the lottery tickets there and just pick up your backup quarterback off waivers when you need to get him and just play the matchups. Again, he's a good streaming quarterback. He's going to be a good streaming option down the line this week, next week, down throughout the rest of the season. There's going to be a lot of good opportunities here. Do you need him? It really depends on the situation of your team, where you're at a quarterback, whether you're playing the waivers or not. If you're solid at quarterback, more than likely you do not need him. You just start your stud, and there you go. But you could pick him up to prevent some of the other teams in your league from getting him just in case he goes nuclear for the rest of the season, just in case he hits his upside, and stash him for a little bit, drop him when you can't hold him any longer. Or if you're playing the waiver wire, that's a guy you're going to be looking at a lot for the rest of the season. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.